Just a few summers ago, we watched with horror as thousands of Central American children, some of them toddlers, were separated from their parents by the US government just to send a message of deterrence south of the border. Many of these children were lost in the system for months, even years, creating a trauma they will carry for the rest of their lives. More recently, we have seen the federal government detain 238 Venezuelan men, in most cases under false charges, and without even an attempt to offer them due process, load them onto planes and drop them into a high-security prison in El Salvador, where they remain to this day, trapped in a nightmarish limbo that few of us can even begin to imagine. So many immigrants, both without and with legal status, now live in this great country of immigrants in a state of fear, not knowing if they will be abducted by masked federal agents driving unmarked cars at any moment, even in the Upper West Side. One can choose to see this situation as the outcome of one bad election, that a group of cruel men were given the power to do something terrible in the name of their xenophobic ideas. Or one can read Everyone Who Is Gone Is Here, Jonathan Blitzer's phenomenal book on Central American migration to the United States, and understand that this horror is only the latest development in a much longer historical process. The immigration crisis that helped a presidential candidate win by promising mass deportations and now to attend them is in fact a product of US policy. In an extraordinary feat of reporting and clear-eyed political analysis, Jonathan Blitzer has written the definitive account of immigration from Central America, showing in remarkable detail how decades of American anti-communist intervention and counterinsurgency, followed by economic interference, have led to a cycle of violence and displacement. Blitzer puts it brilliantly. The fear of the spread of leftism morphed into a fear of the spread of people. A straight line extends between the two, pulled taut during the intervening years of forced immigration, mass deportation, and political expediency. But that is not all that Blitzer has done in this book. He has also done justice to the people trapped in this history and these policy decisions. Media coverage of immigration often portrays its subjects as victims, either condescendingly or through romanticization. But Blitzer shows us real people, their pain, and also, importantly, their triumph. We realize reading this book that those who migrate tend to be exceptional. Most people stay put, even under terrible circumstances. How many among us here tonight would dare take the journey on foot through the Darien Gap or the Sonoran Desert? This book gives us Juan Romagosa, a Salvadoran surgeon who fled his country after being gruesomely tortured and who years later in the US won a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against the Salvadoran generals responsible for his suffering. It gives us the Mack sisters, who dedicated their lives to challenging the Guatemalan military, one of them paying with her life, the other one dedicating hers to complete the mission. It gives us Eddie Ansora, a Salvadoran green card holder who lived most of his life in the US and was deported over a minor drug infraction, and whose story brings us into the maddening cycle of violence created by anti-Latino sentiment in Los Angeles and exported to Central America through deportation, fueling the brutality that led to mass displacement back to the US. This is a book about terrible policy, profound injustice, and extraordinary people. It gives me great joy to present the Hillman Prize for Book Journalism to Jonathan Blitzer for Everyone Who Is Gone Is Here, the United States, Central America, and the Making of a Crisis.
I'm extremely honored to receive this award. So many of the writers and reporters I most admire have been Hillman winners, and it's a genuine thrill to be in their company. This year's honorees only magnify that sense of pride and excitement. Congratulations to them on their exceptional work. I want to thank, before I go any further, I want to thank the Hillman Foundation for this recognition. Graciela, what a special treat to be introduced by you, a writer I so admire. Will Hayward, my editor at Penguin Press, who's here tonight, who was indispensable, of course, in working on this book. my parents, Edlin and Bob Blitzer, who are here, my beloved extended family, Bill Schwartz and Lucy Chutson, and above all, my wife, the great writer and even greater partner, Alexandra Schwartz. So I had to start there. I couldn't go any farther. Covering immigration, as I do, I'm of two minds about the degree to which history keeps repeating itself. We are caught in a moment of real darkness, raging xenophobia, extra-legal enforcement crackdowns, defiance of the courts. What for years has been the ugly subtext at the outermost margins of our political discourse is now the explicit position of the American establishment. Some of the tactics and mechanisms being used at present to vilify and round up immigrants are novel and indeed scary. But there's also a profoundly unoriginal strain that runs through so much of what we're seeing. In the first Trump term, Central Americans fleeing gang crime were accused of being gangsters themselves when they arrived at the United States seeking protection. This was ironic for all kinds of reasons, not least of which was the fact that the gangs they were fleeing in El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras began on the streets of American cities decades earlier, the partial result of US foreign policy a decade before that. Now, Venezuelans with tattoos are being accused of belonging to Venezuelan gangs. The evidence, such as it is not designed to withstand any kind of scrutiny, which may be the reason why the government is resorting to the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to send Venezuelans without any due process to a prison in El Salvador. In the 1980s, the United States and El Salvador's military were aligned, allied in the Cold War. Then the pretext was stopping the spread of leftism in the region. Now the pretext, as Graciela quoted me writing, and now as I'm saying, now the pretext is stopping the spread of people, but even that pretext has since fallen away. The current alliance is one of convenience forged between two openly authoritarian leaders. So, to the fact of history repeating itself, the ties between the United States and El Salvador go back at least to the 1970s or 80s. The political equation linking immigrants to crime, something that statistics and facts do not bear out in the slightest, comes from a playbook designed during the 1980s and 90s. The lack of transparency and the impunity of federal immigration agents operating in 2025 owe their origins to the early 2000s. The symbol of the border as a catch-all and a stand-in for immigration policy writ large is a product, most specifically, of the 2010s. There were times when all the unlearned lessons seemed to pile up senselessly. And yet there's also a solace to be found, I think, in these cycles of history. That solace isn't in politics as such, but rather in people and in the persistence of their ideals. Good people, sensible people, people with courage and compassion, with vision, with pluck, with a great capacity for self-invention and reinvention. They're the people in my book who I feel profoundly lucky to have met and to have learned from. They are witnesses and survivors, and crucially, individuals who have defined their own lives for themselves, in spite of the pressures bearing down on them from powers they couldn't immediately control. I accept this award in their names: Juan Ramagosa, Eddie Anzora, Lucrecia Mack, Kelly Mabel Gonzalez-Breve de Zúñiga. All of them are idealists in a certain way, but none was ever naive about the realities of politics. They would be the first people to tell you that there are others out there who are just like them. Their lives depended on it, and ours do too. Thank you.